الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا ومن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Allah Azza wa Jal tells us in the Quran, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. In the Quran, Allah says, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبعث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به وأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. In the Quran, Allah said, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، وإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار ثم أما بعد. So Broadway has gone dark. E3, South by Southwest, Coachella, these have all been canceled. And Disney parks, for the first time in history, have been canceled worldwide for a month. So why is this happening? So as we all are probably very aware, right, there's a virus going around right now and causing a lot of anxiety and a lot of panic among many people because of how it's spreading and how much people are talking about it. So how do we deal with this virus, with COVID-19 as Muslims? And our religion, as we know, right, Islam is a way of life, right? How do we eat? How do we have interactions with our spouse? What is our family life like? How should we be working? How do we spend our money? All of this is covered in our beautiful deen, and including how do we deal with these kinds of trials. And this is not something new, right? The Prophet ﷺ and the companions, they dealt with plagues and they dealt with, really serious diseases, right? So COVID-19 and all these diseases that we encounter in a lifetime is not something new to Islam. It's a new disease, but the concept is not new. So again, this disease that's spreading around is called COVID-19, right? Which stands for Novel Coronavirus of 2019. And it's called novel because it's a new coronavirus. Many of us here have probably had a coronavirus in our lives, right? I'm pretty sure I have, right? It's called the common cold. And the coronavirus is one of the many viruses that cause the common cold. But sometimes a coronavirus from an animal can mutate and come into humans, and it's something we haven't seen before. Hence, novel coronavirus of 2019 called COVID. It started in Wuhan, China. They've traced it to a meat market, and from there it spread all over the world, including Italy and South Korea, Japan, and in the US, including in New York, as we're aware. Many have died, and many more are being infected every day. But in these times, right, it is scary, and it is something we have to be wary of, but we also have to remember to be safe, to be rational, right, and not get into hysterical anxiety where we can't go and live every day, where we can't do our daily lives, right? We have to be safe and rational, and also take all of our precautions. And we see people going crazy now, right? Hand sanitizer sold out. I went to Key Food yesterday. People are stockpiling food. I've even heard that things like underwear and toilet tissue are being sold out, right? There's no reason for that kind of panic, right? But people are getting scared. But we have to remain calm, right? We know that Allah Azza wa Jal is in control of everything, so may Allah allow us all to remain calm during these times. So what kind of symptoms do we see with COVID-19? So it's symptoms that are typical of an upper respiratory illness: cough, runny nose, sneezing, those kind of things. So if anyone here has those symptoms, right, it's hard to tell from the beginning if someone has COVID-19 or not. So if you have those symptoms, it's best not to be in a public gathering, such as Jummah, right, to keep people safe and to make sure you rest as well. It's best not to come to Jummah, to come to large public gatherings if you have these symptoms. Also, if you're elderly, more at risk from medical conditions to be getting this virus. But what most people actually come okay with this virus, right? 80% in studies so far have shown to be having a mild illness. So the danger is when it progresses to a pneumonia, when it goes deeper, right, away from the nose and the mouth and stuff, and goes into the lungs. And the virus goes and settles in the lungs, and that's where it becomes dangerous. That's where you see on the news people who are in the ICU and intubated and passing away. And it sounds scary. But one thing we don't realize is that there are a lot of diseases out there that are killing people on a daily basis, and we don't even think about it. TB, malaria, even in the US, 16,000 people died this year from the flu. That's a lot of people, right? And people, we don't think about it because it's kind of a norm. It happens every year. People get the flu. We get the flu shot. It's a norm. But this COVID is very new, so that's why it seems so much scary and so much more, dangerous to us. And it is dangerous, right? We can't be complacent, right? But we also have to be, calm. So the death rate right now from COVID, you've probably seen it in the news, anywhere from 2 to 3%. Allahu Alam, some experts have said it may be less than 1% if you count for people who were never tested for the virus and had it. But, data is changing every day. We're getting more information about how COVID works, the amount of cases. So the numbers that you hear in the news are going to change, right? But we do know that most people do have a mild illness, and most people resolve and get better. And this, we've heard about other coronaviruses in the news before, SARS, MERS, right? Those passed around before as well. And those were very, very dangerous. Those are much deadlier than COVID. The only thing is that they were much harder to get, right? So it wasn't as prevalent in our daily lives. We don't hear about it all the time. There's some things that we're learning now, how long it can stay in the air, how long it can live on objects, and more news is going to be coming out, right? But again, this is not the only disease that we have that can be spreading through coughing, sneezing, and stuff. We know the flu can do it. Measles can actually live up to 100 feet, right? It can live on objects for hours, right? So there's other things out there. So the precautions that I will also mention during this khutbah is things that we can take to help protect us from all of these things. And ultimately, all protection comes from Allah Azza wa Jal. So what should we do as Muslims, right? Let's bring it back to our deen and what can we do? So a Muslim should avoid harming others, right? So if they're afflicted with a disease, a cough, a cold, anything more serious that can harm other people, our duty is to avoid harming others. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ, in a hadith we may have heard of, said that he who eats garlic or onion should remain away from us or our masjid and stay in his house. So you can imagine that smell of garlic or onion will distract people from worshiping. So how much more so if someone's coughing or sneezing now, potentially spreading some kind of cold or even COVID, right? How much more distracting will it be for people, and how much of a danger is it to the community? So the onus is on us, right? As members of this community, if we're sick, if we're at risk, to not take that risk and to pray at home, pray Zuhr. In the case of fear, in the case of a time like this, that would be permissible, right? So we have to keep this in mind as this disease progresses and as things change over the next few weeks. So that's something we have to be just very, very mindful of. Also washing our hands, covering our mouth, which I'll talk in a little more detail, inshallah, in a few minutes. Likewise, just like we shouldn't harm others, we shouldn't harm ourselves as well, right? And that goes back to washing our hands. If we're more prone to getting sick, not coming to large gatherings like the Masjid or any other large gatherings, right? Wearing a mask if we're sick to not spread the infection to others. If we are sick, there's some question of whether we should wear a mask or not. The virus is very, very small, right? It comes in these viral droplet particles from our nose and our mouth, so it can come in through a mask, right? So a mask may not be of the most benefit if you're totally feeling fine, because the mask may get a little uncomfortable on your face. You go to touch your face, right? There's probably a lot more exposure for face contact. But if you feel safer with a mask, you want to keep a mask on, just be mindful not to touch your face, right? And to use all other precautions like washing your hands and everything else as well. And soap is extremely effective. This virus has an RNA coat, right? It's a coat that protects it, but soap can get through that coat and can protect us. So soap and water is the best thing we can use to protect ourselves, washing for 20 seconds at least. What about using medication, right? So right now there is no cure, there is no vaccine for this, right? But if a cure came around, right? Or if we're having a clogged nose or something, can we use medication? Wouldn't that be going against trust in Allah, right? If we trust in our views, we can't take anything to who created the cure? Who created the treatment, right? Allah created it. So we're having trust in Allah and availing ourselves, right, using what He has given to us. So I want to talk about a story about Umar when he was Caliph, radiallahu anhu, and when there was a plague going on in Syria. So when he was Caliph, right, he was on his way to Syria, And then he stopped at a place called Sarg, and when he was there, he heard that there was this plague there. And this was about 18 years after the Hijrah. So the Prophet ﷺ, was not alive. Umar had to make decisions on his own with his advisors. And he wasn't sure what to do. Should he keep going to Syria? He had people with him. He had Sahaba, he had other people with him, right? Should he go to Syria, knowing that this plague is here? Or should he go back to Medina? So he wasn't sure what to do. He called the Muhajirun, he asked them. They were on different views. Some said go to Syria, some said go back to Medina. So then he called the Ansar and he asked them, what should we do? Same thing. Some said go to Syria, some said go back to Medina. So then he called the elders of Quraysh, and they emigrated, after the conquest of Makkah, and he asked them what they should do. And they said that he should not expose anyone to it. So Umar decided to return to Medina. So when he was, when he made that decision and he announced it, Abu Ubaidah asked him, "Are you fleeing from the qadr, from the decree of Allah?" And what did Umar say? Did Umar say, "Yes, I'm fleeing from the qadr of Allah"? Of course not, right? He said, "Yes, I am fleeing from the qadr of Allah to the qadr of Allah," right? So he gave an example. He said, if you had camels and they entered a land with two sides, one is fertile, has a lot of greenery and plants, and one is barren, and you grazed them, you took them to the place with a lot of plants so they could eat, wouldn't you be doing that by the qadr of Allah, right? So it's Allah's qadr that if we hear that there's a plague and we leave and we go to a safe haven, that's from Allah's decree, right? And that's what Umar was basically saying. And then to back this up, Abdurrahman ibn Awf, he came and he said, which was narrated in the Sahihs, if you hear that the plague has broken out in a land, do not go to it. But if it breaks out in a land where you are present, do not go out escaping it. And that's the prophetic advice. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he followed this, right? So the Prophet is telling us, in a time of an epidemic or pandemic, right? If anyone stays in their country and he believes or she believes that nothing can happen except by Allah's permission, and then they die, they will be recorded as martyrs, right? And that's in Bukhari. So bringing this to now, right? We know that COVID is not only spreading in Italy, in Japan, and Korea, and Iran, right? But it's also spreading here in the US. So we definitely should not be going to a high-risk country. We shouldn't be traveling there, right? That should be very clear, both from a medical standpoint and a religious standpoint, right? With the hadith that I just mentioned. But even New York, right? We know things may be spreading in New York. So we have to think about traveling to places where the disease may not spread very carefully, right? And that's on a small scale and a big scale. So if we know our family is all very sick, we shouldn't be going out of the way to go to places we don't need to go, right? We may need to go shopping for groceries, going to the bank, right? Essentials. But we should try and limit where we're going, especially if we're sick, right? And if we are sick, we shouldn't escape a land, right? This is all from the prophetic advice. And lastly, before we take a small break, I want to emphasize that we should be careful about spreading misinformation, right? Especially now with Facebook, and especially WhatsApp is the big culprit, right? The WhatsApp forwards, I'm sure we know all about that, right? You see something, it sounds like something you have to pass on. At the end, it says, please share with everybody. So you share it with like all 50 contacts or 100 contacts you have. But I've seen some crazy stuff there, right? One thing I said, probably the craziest thing I saw was saying to tell your kids and family that you have HIV so they won't come near you when you're sick with this COVID, which is absurd advice, right? And they claim that a doctor said this or a professor here. And some advice that people send may very well be true, but some may not. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said that it's enough for someone to be called a liar that he spreads everything he hears, right? We don't want to be in that category. So if we hear something, we verify it, it'll benefit people, of course, spread it, right? We want to benefit people. But don't just reflex spread everything you hear by default just because it says to share it, right? That's not what we do as Muslims, right? And we have to make sure that we're not contributing to people getting more panicked and more worried by spreading false information. So after the break, we'll talk about some more aspects of this disease and our deen and how it can help us. Inshallah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين واستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So we have to remember, right, that no matter what disease it is, COVID, HIV, pneumonia, measles, no matter what disease we're talking about, that no disease can cause harm without Allah's permission. So Allah tells us in the Quran, مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَمَن يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِ قَلْبَهُ وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. So no disaster strikes except by permission of Allah. And whoever believes in Allah, he will guide his heart, and Allah is knowing of all things. So no matter what we do, we can take the greatest precautions in the world and live in a bubble. If Allah decreed that COVID-19 will come to us, it will. And same thing, if we took no precautions and we went to the quarantine ward of the hospital and hung out with all the COVID patients, if Allah decreed it would not come to us, it would not, right? And that's what we have to remember as Muslims, that we have this faith and this knowledge and this belief that Allah is in control of everything, right? It doesn't mean we don't take our precautions, but ultimately Allah is the one in control. So what are some of the Islamic means we can do during this time to help protect us? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said to be mindful of Allah and he will protect you. So we should always be doing this, right? And I remind myself, first and foremost, making dua, making dhikr, right? These are our fortresses that protect us during these tough times. And what are some of the dua we can say? So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he said that whoever says, Bismillahilladhi la yadurru ma'asmihi shayyun fil ardi wa la fis sama wa huwa samiul alim. In the name of Allah, with whose name nothing can harm on earth or in heaven, and he is all-seeing, all-seeing, all-knowing, 3 times, will not be stricken with a sudden affliction until morning comes. And whoever says them when morning comes will not be stricken with a sudden affliction until evening comes. So that's 24 hours a day protection, right? And that's a dua we should remember to try and say more and more often. The Prophet ﷺ, he also used to supplicate, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-barasi wal jununi wal judhami wa sayyil asqami. So, oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from leukoderma, insanity, leprosy, and evil diseases. And that's the key word, right? This dua is asking Allah to protect us from evil diseases, COVID, HIV, SARS, all of these things that encompass in that one thing. And that's something we should really remember, right? And that's a really powerful dua. Another powerful dua that we all know are the 3 quls at the end of the Quran, right? And we should say them in the morning and evening and say them frequently, right? Because those are also an extra source of protection from us. And it's from Allah's blessing that they're so short that most, if not all of us, have them memorized, right? And if we haven't, may Allah allow us to do so we can use them in our prayers and use them for our protection with Allah's will. So it's from Allah's mercy that He gives us these protections. But again, we could still be afflicted, right? If Allah wills it, it can happen. But even then, as Muslims, we always have to look at the positive side. So a famous scholar, Khutbah, he said that in these calamities, we should thank Allah for 4 things. Right? So even if we get affected, right, we thank Allah that it's this and not something bigger, right? We should also thank Allah that He granted us sabr to bear through this trial, right? To bear through what He has decreed for us. We should thank Allah that He has given us the ability to say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And we should thank Allah first and foremost and most of all that this disease is not from our deen. Because no matter what happens to our body, if Allah leads us astray and we're off the path and we lose Islam, that is the biggest thing in the world, right? And in the hereafter. And we don't want to be among people who have disease of the heart and mind, and we lose our Islam, even though our body may be the healthiest. And that's something we have to take very, very seriously and really be grateful to Allah for. So I want to go back to Umar really quick and the plague, right, in Syria. So again, like I said, Umar followed the advice. He went back to Medina, and there was, some talk at the time, of course, during this plague, just like we're talking right now. And Umar, anhu, he was trying to do the right decision, but people were saying, oh man, this plague is a calamity. And Mu'adh ibn Jabal, right, a famous Sahabi, he said that this was not a calamity. It was a mercy of Allah. And Mu'adh's son and Mu'adh himself eventually even died. But Mu'adh, when his son was on his deathbed, he said that this is from Allah, and there should be no doubt in his heart on this account. And his son actually said, you will find me resigned to the will of Allah. Right? And that's the kind of faith we have to maintain in these difficult times, right? The faith that the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ had. So let's come back full circle, right? And let's apply this now to today's situation. So people are dying again of many diseases daily, like I mentioned, right? Like TB and malaria and cholera and measles. And people recover from COVID, right? Most people are recovering, right? There's over 50,000, and that's last I checked. So now it's probably even much more people that are recovering. But there's still reason to be wary, to take precautions, and all of that. And we have a responsibility to keep our community safe. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, no sick one should be put with a healthy one, right? Very clear hadith. If you're sick, don't go to someone healthy, right? And vice versa, right? They shouldn't be together because the disease can spread. And so those of us who are sick, we should refrain from attending Jummah refrain from attending the congregational prayers, any large gatherings, right? That includes going to the supermarket, stuff like that. If someone can do it for us and we're actively sick, we should have someone who's healthy go and do those things for us if possible. And if anyone is even scared, right? If you're scared, you feel fine, you're healthy, you may be not even elderly, but you feel scared or you may get this, right? And you have a legitimate fear, then it's permissible to go pray Zuhr at home, right? In this kind of case, it's a special situation, and that would be permissible. So we also need to take care of how we handle our symptoms if we have them. So if we are sick, right? First, we have to cover our cough, right? It's a simple thing, but it can do a lot of good for the community. And we don't cover it with the air. We don't cover it with our hand. We cover it in our elbow, right? This is the proper way to cough, right? Because you're not going around touching people with your elbow, you're touching everything with your hand. Things also, if you, for example, wipe your nose, you cough in your hand, and you touch something, those particles can last on objects. And we don't know for how long yet. It may be a few hours, it may even be a few days, right? Some coronaviruses, not COVID, but some coronaviruses can actually live on objects for days. So we have to be vigilant about cleaning, right? We have to clean things like our phone. We touch this so many times a day. How often do we clean it, right? So we have to clean our phones, doorknobs, faucets. Anything that's a high-touch area, we should be cleaning it regularly, especially if somebody is sick. And a friend and colleague of mine recently, he did an experiment with his kids. So he bought these little Petri dishes. And if anyone knows what a Petri dish is, it's like a little dish and has a medium, has some substance on it that bacteria can grow on. So he swabbed different things, right, like a counter, his toilet, his shoe, and you would be amazed at the kind of bacteria that grow on these things. You'd actually be disgusted probably if you saw the bacteria that are all around that we don't even see. So especially now, we should be extra vigilant of cleaning everything we can. And if we're coughing, if we're sneezing, covering our mouth, trying to refrain from coming to large gatherings, very, very important. And these are things that it's not coming from me, right? It's coming from the local government, the state government, and the CDC, and the World Health Organization, right? So from the foremost experts in the field are recommending these things. So this is extremely important. We also have to wash our hands, right? Soap and water is ideal, 20 to 30 seconds, and a thorough washing, right? 20 to 30 seconds. If we have hand sanitizer, that's permissible, and it's permissible from a health standpoint, and it will kill this bacteria as well. But make sure you wipe it completely and let it dry, right? But soap and water is still by far the best thing we can use. And we have to take these precautions, because one day the Sahaba came to the Prophet ﷺ and he asked him, should I tie my camel and have tawakkul in Allah, or let the camel kind of go on its own and have tawakkul in Allah? And what did the Prophet ﷺ say? Right? He said, tie your camel and have tawakkul in Allah. So washing our hands and covering our mouth and being careful if we're sick, all of this is tying our camel, and then we have tawakkul in Allah, right? And we really have to remember that and really put all of our trust in Allah. And lastly, this should be a lesson for all of us, to look at the big picture, right? So look at how much people are preparing for this thing, right? As I said, I went to Key Food yesterday, and people are piling their carts with stuff, water, pasta, all of this stuff. A close friend of mine couldn't find bananas and diapers when he went shopping yesterday. Hand sanitizer sold out on Amazon, right? As I said, toilet tissue is gone, right? People are going crazy preparing for what could be a quarantine or whatever the situation may be. May Allah protect us. But this is for, what are we talking about? A few weeks, maybe a few months, Allahu Alam, right? But what are we preparing for the day of judgment, right? So just like we're preparing now for COVID and what can happen, this whole life, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years we have left, 50 years we have left, whatever it is, all of this life is a preparation for the day of judgment. And that should be a big lesson that we take from this, right? Are we doing our salah? Are we doing our zakah and charity? Are we having that relationship with Allah, reading the Quran, doing the best we can to our family and our friends, and spending our money the way it should be, and not doing riba and mortgages and that kind of stuff? Are we really doing what we should be doing to prepare for the hereafter? Because no matter how scary COVID is, and no matter how scary the news makes this seem, there's going to be nothing more scary to us than being there on the day of judgment and awaiting our fate. So we have to prepare for that first and foremost, and let that be a lesson to all of us, myself first and foremost. Ameen. Lastly, we have to be humbled, right? How small is COVID? It's a super tiny bug. We can't see with our eyes. Yet it's destroying people's finances, their health, everything, right? People have 401ks that are nice and maybe nice and plump right now. The stock market crashes and it plummets, right? And they lose their savings. People may be healthy and then they get sick, and some even young people end up in the hospital and in the ICU, right? So Allah can create the smallest thing and make that something that can destroy everything we have in this world. So it should really humble us, right? Even actors, Tom Hanks has coronavirus. Justin Trudeau's wife, the Prime Minister of Canada, has coronavirus. It affects the rich, it affects the powerful, right? It's affecting everybody. And that should be another lesson, right? We should humble ourselves for Allah, knowing that we are really powerless, when we think about this world and everything that Allah can give us, and also what He can do to us, right? The smallest thing can cause so much anxiety and panic among everybody. So may Allah Azza wa Jal allow us all to do the deeds that will grant us His mercy and enter into Jannat al-Firdaus and keep calm during this difficult time. And again, I want to stress a few things, right? First thing is, if you are elderly, right? If you are sick, if you have a chronic disease, diabetes, lung disease, if you have an organ transplant, you're immune compromised, right? Don't come to large gatherings, right? No matter where it is. Be careful, right? Take appropriate precautions, right? That's very, very important to remember. Another thing that's important to remember is that, the masjid is a source of support during this time. And I encourage everyone to really contact the masjid, right? If you have any questions. And as you can see here, we have the ways you can contact us and keep up to date with what's going on with the masjid. You can text us, you can sign up to our mailing list, follow social media. We'll be updating our plans for the masjid and the various programs as we go along. And we are taking this threat very seriously. We are constantly monitoring the CDC, the World Health Organization, the mayor's office, the governor's office, right? When we're following all of their regulations in all of our branches, Wellspring, FCAD, Masjid Eesa, right? So we are taking this very seriously, and we will be available for any questions you have, any concerns, and the safety of our community is our primary concern, right? So take precautions, wash your hands, cover your mouth, don't come if you're sick. If you have questions, reach out to us, and we will be following all the guidelines that the CDC, World Health Organization, and everyone are telling us to keep us and our community and our families and everyone safe. May Allah allow us all to do so. So may Allah keep our families, everyone safe from COVID and all evil diseases. May He protect everyone around the world who are suffering from disease, from oppression, and grant shifa to those who are suffering. And may He enter us all into Jannat al-Firdaus without account. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma inna as'aluka jannah, Allahumma ajirna minan nar. Allahumma inna as'aluka jannah, Allahumma ajirna minan nar. Allahumma inna as'aluka jannah, Allahumma ajirna minan nar. Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qulubana ala dinik. Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qulubana ala dinik. Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qulubana ala dinik. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid. Wa qim as-salah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Make sure all blinds are straight, caps are closed. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim, siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim, ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Qul huwa الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we have, alhamdulillah, one of the community leaders here, as well as a director here at New York City Muslim Center, which is Dr. Sam Anandan. So he just wants to summarize a couple of points, inshallah wa ta'ala, in regards to what we're doing here at New York City Muslim Center and Masjid Eesa in regards to COVID, as well as for next week's preparations for Jummah, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So just to reinforce what we talked about, right? Make sure we're washing our hands, 20 seconds, soap and water, covering our cough, refraining from large gatherings if we're sick. So here at NYCMC, right, including Wellspring and Masjid Eesa and FCAT Institute, right, our goal is to keep us safe. So the first thing, please stay updated, right? We had our text message number. You can sign up for the email list and always check on Facebook and other social media platforms for updates on what's going to happen with our upcoming programs and including next week's Jummah. right? This situation is constantly changing. The governor, the mayor, all of them are changing plans as we find out what's going on in the larger New York State and city community. And we will follow them and we will update you as fast as we can regarding all of our programs and Jummah. Also, as you can see, we have this tarp on the floor. It's one of the precautions we're taking right now in order to make sure it's easier to sanitize and clean the masjid. We will be having a regular cleaning schedule, making sure we're minimizing the risk to everyone here in the community. And as I said, we will be available for questions. My email was up there. I have, I can, if I don't know something, I have access to experts at my institution. So we will be able to answer questions that you have, any concerns, and just know that the Masjid and NYCMC is here for you to support you during this time. And we just that we ask that Allah keeps everyone safe and keeps us all healthy and helps us persevere through this time of challenge. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khairan, Ust.Dr.Samuel Anandan for Khutbah and the reminders. The Ustad already pretty much went over everything, so if you want to just take a picture, just text Masjid to 484848. Just please take a screenshot of this. If you don't have our socials, you can also go to our Facebook and Instagram and also our website, masjideesa.org. This is just to get messages and reminders about regulations that are going to change, inshallah, and that we're going to implement. So please take a picture of this as well. You can also contact Dr. Samuel Anandan, our Khatib for today, for any related issues to COVID-19. Take a picture of his email, write down his email. This is a one-to-one with a doctor. So a doctor might not be available outside right away, but Dr. Samuel, he'll be available for you, inshallah. So the Ustad already went over most of this. Wash your hands, cover your sneezes and your coughs into your arms. Minimize contact with your brothers and sisters, and avoid touching your face. Also refrain from large gatherings, as the Ustad mentioned. You can wear protective masks. Sanitize your phones. You know, these phones are very dirty. A lot of us take the subways, a lot of us take the bus, and when you're touching the handles and then you touch your phones, all that germs that are on the handles are going onto your phone, and then you touch your face. So it's very dirty. And of course, recite dua, constant dua. So if you want to, we have an option to watch the FCAT classes online. Here you can watch the classes in real time and also ask questions to the instructors, to our instructor, Sheikh Farhan Siddiqui. You can learn more at fcatlivestream.com. This is just an interface of what the website looks like. You can see the person in live time, in real time, and you can also see, you can go through the different classes. So our school next door, our Islamic school next door, just launched a homeschool version of for learning, and this is available for kindergarten to 8th grade. You can find out more information at the wellspringschools.org/wellspringvirtual. So the Salah schedule until Sunday, March 15th, Fajr at 6:15 a.m., Dhuhr at 1:15 p.m., Asr at 4:30 p.m., Maghrib 5 minutes after the Adhan, and Isha at 8:30 p.m. So that is all for today's announcements. May Allah truly protect us and our families. Ameen.
best thing is